Ole Miss is chasing 5 potential 5-stars this year. Buckle up.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about how Ole Miss is chasing after 5 players that have a legit chance to end the 2025 recruiting cycle as a 5-star player. And the most important of those players for Ole Miss is Akylin Dear. This is on top of Lane Kiffin winning the transfer portal this year. And you see Lane Kiffin trying to rebuild the late 20-teens Alabama offensive weapons. And it all starts with Akylin Dear. We'll tell you about him. We talk a ton about the wide receiver talent that is currently either committed or looking at the Rebels. And we finish with the quarterback that Ole Miss is going all in on to try and flip as he gets to the Elite 11 without shutting everything down. It may be advantage Lane Kiffin. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers to make the show what it is. July 2nd at 7 o'clock Central Time, you can join us at Walk-Ons in Ridgeland, Mississippi for a meet and greet. It's going to be a really informal thing, but it's a chance for you to meet other Locked On Ole Miss listeners and look around, and it's a way to expand the Loom community through this meet and greet. So we'll see how it goes. This will be kind of our first tour stop. So it might be 5 people there, might be 100 people there. I do not know, but we'll have a good time regardless. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football be elite. You can go through thegrovecollective.com and join today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Now, really interesting stuff. I started thinking when I was talking to Zach Berry the other day, and I think his interview aired Tuesday night. You can go back and look at that. But it's like Ole Miss has a legit chance to sign as many as 5 5-star players this high school recruiting cycle. And this is in a high school recruiting area that people say Lane Kiffin kind of struggles with. But it's helping that Ole Miss football is starting to win a ton of games. They're getting all the buzz. Their name is constantly in the news. So they're starting to figure out what can happen. And 5-star after 5-star, they're getting big name players on campus. And like I always say, if they come to campus, Ole Miss has a legit shot to get him. So we're going to tell you about these players that Ole Miss are going after and these 5-stars that might be 5-stars by the end of the year. You know, they might not be right now, but they could very well be by signing day. We'll let you know who they are. And we're going to start with Kylin Dear. And we're going to start with him because he's kind of the most important player that Ole Miss is signing potentially this year. Now, he's visiting this weekend at Alabama. And Ole Miss and Alabama, they're like old hats in recruiting battles with Suntarine Perkins and Cam Franklin and all these players that Ole Miss is going back and forth with Alabama. But Ole Miss is winning some of these. And Kylin Dear is a must-get for Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is recruiting this person himself. And you can let it know that this offense is going to kind of be built around Kylin Dear. Now, if you look at what he has going on for him, he is currently a top 36 player. He's listed as a consensus 4-star right now, but he only needs to go up like 3 places to be a 5-star at this point. There's usually about 33, 34 5-stars in a recruiting class, so you have to be close with that. If you look at the RPM, the recruit prediction machine, Ole Miss is well out in front of everybody. But if you look at all the individual rankings, On3 has him at 30, like right outside 5-star. 247 Sports has him at 94. ESPN has him at 86. And Rivals has him at a 5.9, which is right below a 5-star as well. All have him in the top 100 in the country. Most have him in the top 50 in the country. Really interesting stuff. Now, the thing you notice about Kylin Dear is whenever you watch his highlights, you notice that, hey, this guy runs like a much smaller running back. He looks like somebody, Dexter McCluster or somebody out running around with the way that he's able to move. And then you look at the roster and you see that this guy is over 200 pounds. And that is what other recruiting services are noticing as well. You go back to it. I took it down. I'll bring it back up. He's the number one running back in the country, according to 247 Sports. He's the number 2 on 3, the number 2 on ESPN. He's the number 5 on Rivals.com. Really, really good running back that Ole Miss desperately needs. Now, the trick with this Ole Miss offense is that it is a running offense. Even though Lane Kiffin has thought about being a high-flying offensive coordinator, it all starts with the running game. If you notice what Ole Miss was able to do and how he was able to find a Quinshon Judkins, he's recruited Henry Parrish. Really good running backs has been recruited by Lane Kiffin and Kevin Smith at Ole Miss, and Akylin Dear is kind of the next in line for that. Really good player. He's somebody that I fully expect to be a 5-star player by the time signing day rolls around. Once he hits the All-Star games, I think he's set up to go to the Under Armour All-American game. Yay, Under Armour All-American game. All the recruits that are watching this, go to the Under Armour All-American game. I'll be there if you're interested in Ole Miss. But he's going to go down there with some really big competition. And if you see him pull off a game similar to what Jerry and Ely was able to do in the Under Armour All-American game when he played in 2018, or I guess early 2019, you have a situation to where this guy could completely blow up. And Ole Miss in the transfer portal, whenever you look at what's going on, Ole Miss is building for Kylin Dear. If you look, there's a ton of one and dones. Henry Parrish Jr., one and done. Rashad Amos, he's can go 2 years, but who knows how that exactly it's going to look. Ulysses Bentley IV, one and done. At the end next year, the worst case scenario for Kylin Dear is Kylin Dear comes in and is in the 3-headed monster in Ole Miss's backfield with a Logan Diggs and maybe with a Rashad Amos. The running backfield looks like that moving through 2025 and beyond. Really big player. Like I said, he's visiting Alabama this weekend. They're going to put the full court press on him. You don't recruit 5-stars by yourself. Other people are interested in them. If you think they're just yours, it's problematic for you at best. But Kylin Dear is going over to Alabama, and they're going to put the full court press on him. I do think this is a situation to where Ole Miss can win this because, honestly, you've seen the videos on the site. Kylin Dear is the most important player in Ole Miss's class for 2025. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. Now, Lane Kiffin looks like he's trying to build other pieces as well. And we look at the wide receiver at the potential 5-stars that's over there. Anyway, Game Time is the place to get your NBA Finals tickets with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we started talking about Kylin Dear because I genuinely think that with Kylin Dear, you're moving towards that late 2016, 2017 Clemson model. This is your Travis Etienne type player with Akylin Dear. He's so important for Ole Miss's class, and they have him committed, and it's better to have him committed than not, but you have to understand how it's going to go. Really good player. Now, if you look at some of the other players that Ole Miss is recruiting, we'll start off with another commitment in Jerome Myles. Jerome Myles is listed as a 5-star on 247 Sports. So this is the potential second 5-star that Ole Miss has. And these are two commits that are already in the boat. By signing day, both of them could have 5 stars by their name. Jerome Myles is a really good player, and he has blown up in recent months as a player on the Utah track circuit that is putting blazing times down, like state record level times. And he's been measured at 6'3", 205 pounds, which tells me he has a little bit of DK Metcalf in his game. He has a chance to be a really, really physical wide receiver and has a chance to be really, really good. Now, the wide receiver position that Ole Miss is recruiting this year is pretty special. It is. It's like Alabama 2019 special, LSU 2019 special. Whenever you have somebody like Jerome Myles to go with Akylin Dear and the other players that Ole Miss is recruiting, if Ole Miss can land them, you basically have a line change coming into Ole Miss after this year. Because let's go up and look at what Ole Miss has at the receiving position this season. You have Trey Harris, who is the best receiver potentially in college football. I do think now, with him being a one and done, he is going to be the productivity that Ole Miss is most looking to replace. So they're looking for a guy to come in and be that dominant piece. They're losing a quarterback in Jackson Dart, who threw for 3,300 yards a year ago, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Really, really good player. One and done this year. You got Deion Smith, who has admitted, these are our stats at Holmes County Community College, where he had 48 catches, 1,063 yards, and 12 touchdowns. He admitted that he wanted to come here, lead the NCAA in receiving, and go pro. He wants to be a one and done. Juice Wells, one and done. This is his numbers from 2022, 68 catches, 920 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then, of course, Mr. Reliable and Jordan Watkins, one and done. 53 catches, 741 yards, 3 touchdowns for young Jordan. Now, you see what I'm talking about. When it comes to this wide receiver unit, this is why Ole Miss is going so heavy on that group. Now, they're going to supplement whatever they're doing in the transfer portal. This was the number 1 team in the transfer portal per 247 Sports this year. As we sit right now, they're number 1. So is this high school recruiting is almost a little bit of a surprise. And when you add in all the 5 stars they have a chance to get, it's a real surprise to the point where everybody needs to take notice of where Ole Miss football is. Now, Jerome Myles coming in as that bigger outside type wide receiver. I do not think he is a Trey Harris at this point. I think that he is a Deion Smith. If you want to look back at the 2018 NWO, I think he is the DeMarcus Lodge in this receiving room, if you want to look at it. Now, DeMarcus Lodge was my favorite receiver on that group, but I do think Jerome Myles has a role to play. He, like I said, he's blazing fast. He is a super big physical guy, and he has room to grow a little bit. Corner Canyon is in an area to while he's at one of the major high schools in the state, Utah is not an overly scouted person. If you ask Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, what's going on. So we'll see what's going on with Jerome Myles and see if that goes up. He is going to the what used to be the Army All-American Bowl. Now I guess it's just the All-American Bowl. It's the San Antonio flavor as we speak right now. Now, the other one that is on the list is Winston Watkins Jr. He is a 5-star owned Rivals currently, and he is listed as on the RPM as high on Texas A&M. That's because he decommitted from Texas A&M. He has a visit set up in coming days and weeks with Ohio State. Ole Miss is in a really good spot, and I think Miami is going to try to work their magic as well. He's 5'9.5". He's 175 pounds. He's from Venice High School in Fort Myers, Florida. I think it's Fort Myers, Florida. Really good player. He is a prototypical slot wide receiver. He is honestly, the Elijah Moore of this wide receiver room. I know that A.J. Brown was the guy in 2018, but he's the smaller guy. Have trouble catching him in a phone booth. He's a super athlete. He is the cousin of Sammy Watkins, of former Clemson fame. But Winston Watkins is a really good player. He goes by Winnie Watkins. He visited Ole Miss over the weekend. He had a really good visit to the point where, people were talking about, hey, should we put predictions in for him and all of that? But with Ohio State sitting out there on the official visit, it's going to be a battle to get this young man. Like I said, anytime you're recruiting a 5-star player and you assume it's over, you assume it's going to be easy, that's your problem. So you have to assume that it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a war, whichever side of this battle you're on. Like, whether or not you are looking at a Akylin Dear, just assume that Alabama is going to give their best shot and do whatever they can do to try and convince him to change his mind. The same goes with the Winston Watkins whenever he's choosing uncommitted between Ohio State and Ole Miss. And the same thing goes whenever we talk about in the next segment, Duce Knight at Notre Dame. You can't just say, hey, this is over, this is locked up. And I realize that in recruiting, people just want it to be over. They want whatever thing to happen, you push a button and it's done. But that's not the way it works. That's not the way recruiting works anymore. Commitments aren't even what commitments used to be in high school high school recruiting. Now, a signing in high school is like a commitment in high school recruiting used to be. Because after the first year, they can transfer. You can keep the line of communication open the whole time. If they commit to you, if they sign with you, that's fine. Go get them next year. Oh, that didn't work. Go get them next year. That is the way that recruiting works in college athletics right now. Now, understand that certain people are going to want Congress or whoever to set in for a way to protect themselves and make players stay. But as it sits right now, Ole Miss is kind of dominating this personnel space because they just try and maximize every aspect of it. It's the reason they're number one in the transfer portal. That's the reason they have all the analysts going on. It's the reason their offensive and defensive coordinator in the top 5 best paid in the country. It's the reason Lane Kiffin's making $9 million a year. That's the reason in high school recruiting, they got a bunch of guys that are really good in that realm. That's the reason they're finding GMs and assistant GMs, and there's a lot of player personnel that's happening behind the scenes. You have an organization that is being built by Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss that's for the long haul. Whether or not Lane Kiffin is here, the next coach needs to hold all of this because there is so much construction going on around Ole Miss football right now. It's like the Nashville skyline. There's cranes all in the air. So Winston Watkins is a really good player, and no Ole Miss fan should just assume that he's going to end up at Ohio State or Miami because he's visiting them there. Anytime a player ends up on Ole Miss's campus, Ole Miss has at least a 50% chance to get them. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We finish up with the 2 Mississippi stars that are dominating the cycle, and it's interesting to think about. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that are covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. Now, we put these 2 in the third segment, not for anything about them or saying, but we've talked a good bit over the last couple of weeks about Duce Knight, and we've talked about Caleb Cunningham. So we wanted to give the other people a little bit of love as well. But Caleb Cunningham is still out there. He's taking visits. He's visited Auburn. He's visited Ole Miss unofficially. Like, he went to Auburn, came back, and the next day took an unannounced visit to Ole Miss. That's pretty cool because Choctaw County isn't just down the street. We're not talking about Justin Woodall here or something that happened, Brandon Turnage, where he could just go over to the facility in 2019. Choctaw County's Ackerman. That's an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away on country roads, on back roads. It takes a little bit of effort to get there. So you don't just get there by accident. You just don't go because you're bored. That's my point there. But Caleb Cunningham is a really good player. Now, nobody needs to underestimate this guy. He's ranked in the top 15 in the country consensus. He is a 4-star on On3 at number 15. Really, they have less than 15 5-stars at this point. 22 on 247 Sports. He is a 5-star. ESPN has him at 19. He's a 4-star. And Rivals has him at 22. He's a 4-star. He is somebody that when they expand the number of 4-stars and 5-stars that they have, he's just going to accumulate them over and over again. And if you look, he's a consensus 5-star on that list. This guy's a freak, man. He can do whatever you want him to do on a football field. He is the A.J. Brown of this class. You hear me talking about those 2018 NWO wide receivers. If Ole Miss can land him, they just landed A.J. Brown. And I'm not just saying that because he's from Ackerman, which is right down the road from Starkville. I'm saying that because he is legitimately special. Over the last few years, the best wide receiver that Mississippi has produced is Aiden Williams. Last year, there was not a wide receiver produced in the state of Mississippi that was as good as Aiden Williams. Caleb Cunningham is as good as Aiden Williams. He is somebody that he's 6'3", 185 pounds. He moves very smooth. He has an excellent catch radius. It's extreme athleticism. If you want to see something interesting, go to his huddle page and watch his basketball highlights and him just dunking on 2 and 3A players in the state of Mississippi. At least I think that's what Choctaw County is. I think Ackerman was there. Maybe Choctaw County is a little bit higher than that. But he's a really good player. If you look at his RPM, Mississippi State is still the predicted leader, and it's a situation where games have to be played by Mississippi State. It's all fun to say that, but games have to be played. And every time, like he went to Auburn, he just buzzed about Auburn. He went to Ole Miss, he just buzzed about Ole Miss. He went to Florida, he just buzzed about Florida. So I don't think anybody knows exactly where Caleb Cunningham sits. I do give him all the respect in the world for not committing over and over again and then playing the game. He's just playing the game right now, and he's honestly doing it quite well. Now, the last player that we want to talk about is Duce Knight out of George County, left-handed quarterback. He was the MVP of the OT7 tournament in Tampa, Florida this past weekend. He is a good player. Every TV in the Ole Miss office was on the OT7s in that game. They were watching Duce Knight. Yes, I realize that he is committed to Notre Dame. I realize that he says all the right things. But because of the situation that Duce Knight is being put in right now, because Notre Dame is a good school, he likes it. I think he's genuinely torn about where he wants to be. I mean, I don't think there's anything there. Why would you jeopardize that by trying to actually break a rule that you have? And just so everybody knows, either I think Marcus Freeman might allow commitments to take official visits to other places, maybe, but they have some strict rules. It's not quite as strict as Dabo, but it's still there. And if all of a sudden, if he takes an official visit to another place, if he starts talking about another place like he's genuinely interested in him, Notre Dame's going to take it as he's open. And his commitment might not be honored, and he is going to lose his safety school. So what is happening is whenever you talk to, we had Zach Berry on the show Tuesday. Zach Berry was down at the OT7s in Tampa. He talked to players. in there about Duce Knight, what was going on with him. Talked to parents that were there. He talked to people covering the event. And the consensus that he got was that everybody said, hey, Notre Dame did all this. They're saying all the right stuff, all of that. And at the end of it, it says, but I think he flips to Ole Miss. So it's going to be at a bare minimum interesting. Okay. It is. Lane Kiffin's not going to give up, even if he shuts down recruiting this weekend, because this weekend Duce Knight is in South Bend for an official visit. Even if he shuts down the recruiting, Lane Kiffin's not going to stop. You're still going to back channel it. You're still going to do all of that stuff. And you're going to try and eventually get him to your campus. That's the goal. And just remember, everybody, the goal in high school recruiting now is to finish in the top two. Finish in the top two. And just say a Duce Knight who went up to Lipscomb Academy in Nashville, Tennessee last year, played half a season before transferring back to George County. You do want to be on that transfer list. You do want to be right there. You want to be the first call if things do not work out. That's the way it works. That's the way it is. And we will see what happens. Again, Notre Dame is going to full court press him to shut it down after this visit. If he doesn't, I think it might be advantage Lane Kiffin. And then he's going out to the Elite 11, and we'll pay attention. And we're going to follow Duce Knight all the way through December. I'll put it to you like this. Notre Dame really wishes there was a June signing day this year. They really wish that. This having to go another 4 months, that's at best problematic for them. Like I said, we'll see exactly what happens. But those 5 players have a chance to all be 5 stars. If you look at Duce Knight real quick before we get out of here, the Notre Dame commit, he is pretty much a consensus number 56 player. He needs a big Elite 11 to move up the rankings. He is the one that is iffy on whether or not he will make a 5-star because he is around 50 overall. But he's a really good player, and he has a chance to make a jump. He was the MVP of the OT7, and if he shows out at the Elite 11, you can definitely pencil him in to move up, at least in the rankings, probably in the 40s or 30s. And then the all-star games and all of that stuff can happen as well. Really good player, supreme athlete, and everything like that. All right. Just to let you know, again, next week I am on vacation. You'll have a Locked On Ole Miss podcast that I will have pre-recorded on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On Thursday and on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, there will be 3 interviews and a top 5. No, 4 interviews. Not a top 5 that week because Brian Smith will be in on Thursday. So hang out with that. The week after that, I will be back in. It'll be full go. It'll be just like it always is. And then the week of July 4th, I will be out again going to my mother's birthday. So please be patient with that. And I will see whoever wants to see me at walk-ons in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Should be pretty interesting indeed. So thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. We have the most perspectives surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the number 1 Ole Miss podcast out there. And thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic is the top 5 head coaches in Ole Miss football history. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched their first ever 24/7 national streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available for free on the Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we're going to send you there right now. Take care, everybody. Hotty toddy.